All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Jen White. I'm the Director of Student Engagement at the Manufacturing Institute and also lead up the MFG Day efforts nationwide from the MI as well. So I'm excited that you're all taking the time to join us this afternoon, learn more about Manufacturing Day, but more importantly, we have some wonderful MFG Day hosts who've been doing this for years that are going to share with you a little bit today about how through their different organizations they organize their MFG Day events each year, and some lessons learned that they've learned over time, or obviously through the years as well. So as we get started here, so this year we will celebrate MFG Day nationally on October 6th, but keep in mind that date does not always work for everybody. MFG Day events continue to happen. We'll see some starting even in September. They'll continue through the month of October into November. And then we see companies too, where it makes more sense sometimes, especially if they're working with the schools, to do MFG Day events in the spring, and that is totally okay. The key is that you're connecting with students, with educators, and parents throughout the school year to really raise awareness and change those perceptions of manufacturing and get kids thinking and excited about what the possibilities of working in our industry could look like. So if you have not attended either of the previous webinars, we have hosted 2 already, and those recordings are found at mfgday.com under the resources page. So this is the 3rd in our planning series. We'll have 1 more coming up in 2 weeks. It'll focus more on some best practices in school outreach, amplifying the message of MFG Day, marketing your own event, so on and so forth. So if you haven't registered for that one yet, those email invitations will start to come out soon. And then you can also see the link on that on the Manufacturing Institute events page, as well as when you go into mfgday.com under resources, the webinars, there's actually a link there where you can go and register as well. So we hope that you'll join us. But again, today focuses on best practices and some ideas to help you start moving towards or improving, I guess, maybe the planning of your event as well. I know we have a lot of folks that have been doing this for years and years. But I think there's always, things that we can learn from one another as well. And if you have any kind of best practice tips or lessons that you've learned and you want to put those into the chat today, we welcome that. And we would be glad to compile and kind of send those out afterwards in the follow-up email as well. So thank you to everybody who may contribute some of your thoughts and ideas. So just an overview, I think everybody is probably pretty familiar at this point, but if you're not, MFG Day really is, it's an initiative from the Manufacturing Institute at the national level, but the magic really happens at the grassroots and within communities across the nation. And it really takes efforts from all of us as one manufacturing community to make it impactful and successful. But it is manufacturing's biggest annual opportunity to inspire the next generation, to change those perceptions and, again, get them thinking positively, not just the kids, but parents and educators. Many of them don't know what these careers look like, what a manufacturing facility even looks like on the inside. So this is our opportunity to give them those experiences and to get them thinking about the future and what it might take, and the diversity of roles in the industry. It's not just the shop floor. We need everybody in manufacturing, and also the variety of pathways to get into these types of careers. So ultimately, the goal of MFG Day is to increase nationwide awareness and show the realities of modern manufacturing, to inspire the next generation, whether that's, students that are going to be ready to go to work tomorrow, or those who, may not be ready to enter the workforce for another 10, even 15 years. And we know that things are going to change drastically within that next decade or more. But how do we start building that pipeline of talent to overcome the skills gap that we're faced with today? So ultimately through MFG Day, we're going to showcase the diversity of career opportunities, especially those that are in their own backyard. We want to demonstrate that manufacturing is cool, it's high tech, it's sustainable, it's safe, it's essential, and it is everywhere. Show me a community in the US today that doesn't somehow have a connection to a manufacturer. Manufacturing careers offer high pay, and we're seeing that grow even more. Tons of professional growth and professional development opportunities, the ability to impact the world around us. And that's something that's really important to kids, to this younger generation. We want to talk about Gen Z. They want to know that what they're doing matters and that they are making the world a better place. And ultimately, it empowers manufacturers to come together, address the collective challenge that we all face with the workforce struggle, and to help our communities and future generations thrive. As I mentioned, MFG Day is an initiative of the Manufacturing Institute. If you're not familiar with the MI, it is the 501c3 nonprofit workforce development and education affiliate of the National Association of Manufacturers. We do have sponsorship opportunities available for MFG Day. If you're interested, I can pop that prospectus into the chat for you. But please know that being involved with MFG Day, hosting events, using the branding that's available on the website, registering your events on mfgday.com, and all of our resources, our toolkits, are 100% free to you. You do not have to be an MFG Day sponsor. You do not have to be a member of the National Association or any of those. It is 100% free to you to use. We want as many companies and partners of manufacturers involved in MFG Day as possible. So there is no one size fits all for MFG Day, and we've talked about that in the past. There's a variety of different types of events that you can host or attend if you're potentially not a host yourself. One of the most common is typically a facility tour, but as you kind of look through here, you can see if you are reaching students and educators, parents, even community members, and you're changing or I guess growing awareness of manufacturing and hopefully exciting folks about potentially working in the industry. These events can look all different types of shapes and sizes. And so today, the organizations that you're going to hear from are both manufacturers, but one is a small manufacturer and one is a very large manufacturer, because I often get companies who say, you know, we have several different sites across the US or even in other countries. Canada is one we commonly hear. But how do we organize events across multiple sites as well? So hopefully you're going to get some insight into that as well. So first, I would like to introduce Eric Eisbister, who is the CEO of GenMet Corporation. He's going to share with you a little bit about what they do at GenMet. So Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For the last 24 years, my wife and I have owned and run GenMet. GenMet's a 50-person metal fabricator located just a little bit north of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We make truck parts and locomotive parts and store kiosks and half-inch and thinner steel, aluminum, and stainless steel. We've got lots of arcs and sparks and bending and cutting. Students love it when they come in and see it. And quite frankly, we've had over 3,000 students tour here, and my goal is to let them know that manufacturing exists. Most of them don't. Most parents don't. Most teachers and guidance counselors and school board members don't have the faintest idea what we do. And when they walk in the building, their jaws hit the ground and they're excited to see things. I'm honored to help the Institute teach students and teachers that making stuff is cool. Too few people do that. We need to do it. And when you're having a beer with your manufacturing buddies, get them to do it as well. We've had tours here since before Manufacturing Day existed, over 3,000 students. Last Last manufacturing day, we had a high school group from a local high school. We had a tech college class, and we had 80 second graders. It was a blast. We had little kids running all over the place. Briefly, how we work tours at GenNet. They come from the school bus upstairs into a training room. We talk to them for about 15 minutes. We lay on pretty heavy safety, stay with your tour guide, ask lots of questions. And quite frankly, for the younger kids, they ask tons of questions. But high school students are often too cool to ask too many questions. So sometimes you have to pry it out of them, their interest. Our people know the students are coming. It's obviously, we have a lot of tourists, they know it, and they are very proud. The workstations get cleaned up. People are very proud to talk to the students. There's some pictures here, rolling pictures that Jen's going to flip through that are not really choreographed with my words, but they're just pictures of GenNet. The safety is a concern. You can see the blue curtains on this particular slide. That prevents people from seeing flashes. We do set up a booth with a whole bunch of welding helmets and let the kids put the welding helmets on and see. In the presentation, which, as I said, is about 15 minutes, my wife says I yell at the kids. She's right. I yell at the kids. I try and impress on them what manufacturing is and how there are good paying careers that they can get into. After I get done yelling at the kids, we divide up about 5 students per tour guide. And our employees like being the tour guides. They're very proud of it. Now we spread out and go through everything, the front office, so engineering and purchasing. The students' eyes go open when our purchasing representative says that she buys $4 million worth of stuff every year. Some logistical cautions. The time seems to start going a million miles an hour. We're always hurried. Time flies. Often it's the school lunch or the end of the day, or surprisingly, it's the school bus schedule makes you have to hurry up often. Ideally, you'll notify your local school before the end of the year. We have sent out emails and letters already this year notifying them that manufacturing day is the first Friday in October next year. And we caution the schools that school buses are often hard to come by. In times of tight dollars, we've actually paid for the school buses so that the kids can get here. Also, don't just invite students, but teachers and guidance counselors and administrative people, school board members. They all should be welcomed, because some of those, if you get a student, you got 1. If you get a teacher, you got 24. If you get a school board member, you've got the person with the pen that can authorize things, purchases and things. Those are important. The workstations, we flow through the whole thing. That happens to be a picture of the second graders in class. You can see safety glasses there. Also, at the end, if I have time, I have about a box of about a dozen parts. The parts all have something wrong with them. I have the prints. I ask the students if they can read mechanical drawings, and almost always they say no. And I say in about 5 minutes, you'll be able to. And I teach them things about tolerances, even second graders, about calipers. And then I have them read these drawings and find out what's wrong with the parts. Oh, by the way, I also take that box into classrooms. I've been in over a dozen classrooms so far this year. And teachers like that. They like it when representatives of manufacturing come into the class and show them what we do. Looking at my notes to see if I'm staying on track. We often, on manufacturing day, if we expect a lot of people, we'll ask our vendors to set up a booth. They do a wonderful job. The steel providers show the students where the steel has come from the iron ore all the way through to when it comes in our door. It's very interesting. Our weld supply place has brought in a weld simulator, you should see the kids going around high-fiving each other that, "Oh, I got a 98, oh, I got a 96. And it excites them to see it. There are a few other things that you can do. All schools have advisory boards. The school would love to have a manufacturer on their advisory board. Two of the local high schools that I've been on advisory boards for 2 decades now got large referenda to build STEM education areas. I was not quiet in any one of those meetings. The manufacturers, need to fight for what we want. I'll give you an example of just a little thing that I said that I think has a big difference. I told the architects who were working with one of the schools that I wanted the non-STEM kids to have to walk through the STEM area on their way to lunch hall or on their way to the bathroom. Both schools did that, and I can remember there was an advisory board meeting where the teacher was talking to the advisory board, and he was giggling that just before the bell went off, he told 3 of his students, "Go grind something. We need arcs and sparks and CAD work on the computers." And as hundreds of kids flowed by the glass windows of the STEM area. Going into schoolrooms is a good thing. Participating in junior achievement. Junior achievement has wonderful curricula that help people. And not only the top brass of the company, but other people, other administrative people. Maybe. I've also sent welders and quality inspectors into classrooms. One of my welders spent about 5 or 10 times going into the local high school on his own without getting paid and teaching kids. So that's a wonderful way to do things. We also hire students for the summer. We probably have about 6 each summer. We also hire teachers. We call them teacher externships. And our goal is to give the teachers real stories so that when a kid is wondering why he should study trigonometry, the teacher can say what he learned at a press break while forming things. We've had some students come multiple summers. Some people have worked their way all the way through mechanical engineering school. We've also had architects and other disciplines of students come in and learn what we do. Feedback in these things is often hard to get. There's no real, there's thank yous and things like that, but nothing really that you can put your finger on as far as feedback, except I was talking to a young lady, this is about 2 years ago. She was looking for a summer job. I started explaining what GenMed is. She cut me off. She says, "I know GenMed. I was there in 5th grade." So maybe that was one of the thank yous. With that, I'll entertain questions or listen to the other presentation.
I think I was a little slow getting through your photos, Eric. So let me finish flipping through here. He warned me, how sometimes we have to give him the hook and he's going to stop talking. So I was stretching the photos out.
So on the right hand here, that's our quality inspector, and he's got these kids wrapped. He's showing them things like tolerances. He gets out all the measuring instruments, and when they see dials and digital and shiny, the kids are just riveted to it. In this particular presentation, there was a large group of kids, maybe 5 to 10. The teacher actually burst through the group, pointed at what he was talking about, said, "That's exactly what we're doing next week." Hopefully the students went, "Ooh, now they have some way to put their finger on what's going to be going over the next week." The kids on the left, that's our laser, and big shelves go up and down, and metal moves all over the place. You shift to Carter's letter again. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that when you go to the dentist office, the dentist or the dental hygienist will stick every tool they have in your mouth and then ask you a question. Well, in this case, the dental hygienist had all of her tools in my mouth and was talking about how her son was starting to have a little issue getting motivated in school. And with my mouth full, I said, "Send him to me." Well, she did bring young Carter, that's him in that picture, to GenMed. I gave him a tour. I took out my box of things, and we measured and we read prints, and I got this letter that I'm very proud of. I think we changed that young man's look forward as to see why he wanted to do whatever he was studying. And if you read it, I want to be an engineer that designs the parts you make. I consider that a touchdown.
Absolutely. We do have a couple questions coming in, but we're going to hold on questions. So feel free to keep adding them to the chat. We're going to move on to Meredith here in just a moment, but we will come back and we'll do a Q&A session with both Eric and Meredith once we get through the two different event type presentations here. So Eric, thank you. We're coming back to you in a few minutes. And then with that, I'm going to move on to Meredith Raffy, who is Assistant Manager of Government and Industry Relationships at America Honda Motor Company. And she is joining us after, I think, already hosting a group of students just earlier in the day over at Honda. So Meredith, thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about how you manage MFG Day across several different manufacturing sites.
Awesome. Thank you. And you're right. We had a group of 20 middle schoolers here today, which that was an interesting group. They were really excited. We brought them through our East Liberty manufacturing plant. And then we brought them to our museum, which I'm sitting in a big open room. So hopefully my voice isn't echoing too much for you all. But I put together a few slides to explain a little bit of how Manufacturing Day is being handled here at Honda. You can go to the next slide. So the first thing is we set what our goal is for Manufacturing Day. And at Honda, we call those A00s. It's just what is your large goal that you're trying to achieve? And when we look at Manufacturing Day, we see that as how do we inspire students to consider a career inside of Honda? And we do that. And then so that's our larger goal. Then we start to break down what our smaller goals are, or our additional goals from there. So you hit next. So we at Honda, because I'm an engineer by trade, and so we like to have everything on a spreadsheet. We like to have KPIs and strategies and objectives and everything listed here. So what I did was break down to say, what are we looking at? What are our main objectives for Manufacturing Day? And divided those up into kind of three main things. How do we teach the students about what all we have going on at Honda? And inside of manufacturing, these are not unique, right? But we have design, we have engineers, we have marketing, we have quality, we have testing. So we have all those features. And what we want to do is show the students all of those different careers and do that in a very hands-on way. So how do we make them embed them in the activities? The next thing was, again, how do we engage them in a variety of those activities? We want to make sure that they're getting a full, broad spectrum of the different jobs and the different roles. And then, looking at it from the very first time they walk through the door through the very end from a product perspective. And then showing them all of that, of the career itself. How do we hype up the career? How do we show them that a career in manufacturing can set them up for life? And that was kind of those three main objectives. So then the next thing that we looked at was, what are the targets? What are we looking for? And again, we do this with the consideration of, we have 10 manufacturing plants. So looking at all of those, we want them to have all of the same similar experience. So roughly, if Eric mentioned, we're constrained by buses. That's the same thing. So, our manufacturing plants is probably most of yours. They start around 6 or 6:30 in the morning. Well, students don't. The earliest they often can get here is 8:30 or 9. And then they often have to leave around 2 or 2:30 in order to be home for the regular bus route. So we are absolutely, our time is limited as well. So how do we fit those students in? How do we get them through? And looking at that. Then we also, this past year, we wanted to have the majority of the students go through the program, and we did what we called a passport, and we had the students walk through. They had a little passport, and every time they visited one of our exhibits or one of the booths, they got a sticker. So it was like a stamp in their passport. Once they had that complete, then they walked out with a prize in hand. And at Honda, besides our cool white uniforms, we also in manufacturing have a green hat that we wear. And that generally has a bump cap in it. So our reward to the students who are going through all of that, you walk out with the Honda green hat. So I'm not going to go through all of the rest of these, but we set intentional targets to say, we want to have this many product displays. We want to have this many, this type of engagement, and we kept those to be quantifiable for the most part. So from a social media perspective or from a regular media perspective, how did we gauge success? Did we have, are we driving enough people to our websites? Are we using the QR code from a survey perspective or from a job link perspective? We set all of those up to say we have very hard targets. So then it moves to our next step, which is our strategies to achieve those. And what I could have done, and we didn't, but we could have given 300 students per location and then started those invitations in that specific manner. This is a little bit different, but we looked at those strategies to achieve and said, are we inviting the right people? Who are we getting our invitations out to? Are we working with our partner schools in that key location surrounding our plant? How do we have that start to finish engagement? What videos are playing? Are we having the right types of booths with hands-on activities? Are all of those existing at each of our locations? Do we have the swag that we want to give out? Is there something that students are really wanting that are going to make students really excited? Is it a shirt? Is it, like we said, the Honda green hat, which is shocking to me that so many students want those green hats, but they do. It was a real driver for them. And then we started looking at, from our getting students from a career perspective, how do we engage them with our talent acquisition group, recruiting group? How are they giving them the right information based on questions that they have, that type of thing? Are we driving them towards the career portion of our website? And then the last thing that we do is, yeah, you can hit that. Yeah, we look at the results. I don't have it filled out here, but the way that Honda does things is red, yellow, green. Did we do a bad job? Did we do an okay job, but room for improvement? Or did we do a good job and did we met that? So we would track each of our targets. So we keep those things in mind to understand this is really what our target is with Manufacturing Day. It's to inspire students for a career, or, our broader goal was let's make it cool, right? We want students to think that this is a cool place to work. Again, keeping with the manufacturing, NAM's theme overall. So this was our goals for last year. We're working on our goals for this year. Right now, we're kind of working together as all of the plants. So if you look at the next slide, the way that we build our team, with kind of 4 main areas. So myself, from a workforce partnership perspective, we kind of own that overall event. We set the budget. I don't want to say we dictate, but we help guide some of those activities. So again, we have all of our Honda facilities will have the same type of activity, but we'll have a local feel. But then we also bring in a couple of other groups. So it's not just me leading it. We all build this together. Our corporate social responsibility group supports the company they kind of own all of our local relationships. They're working with our outside groups. They're going to send the invitations. They're going to reach out to the schools, hype them up. They're going to send the save the dates. They're going to do all that. So they own those relationships. So they're that point person. Then we involve our communications group. Obviously, we want them to communicate internally and externally. We want people hyped up inside of the plan as well. I like what Eric said, like you're involving your team. We try to do that as well. I know that it's quite a bit different. We have to get that communications out to thousands of people and say, hey, this next week, there's going to be people at your facility. When you see them, wave to them, talk to the students, and we need volunteers. We need people to help. I mean, these are only as successful as our volunteers. As we're bringing in 300 students at each location, we need people to help and support that. So they also cover our social media. They cover the day of activity. They're talking with external media. They're writing stories. They're, getting all the waivers signed off, that type of thing. That's all happening with our communications group. And then our government industry relations group, of which I'm a part of, they are going to coordinate with all of our local, state, and federal government and entities. Do we need to bring, everybody likes the photo op walking through with kids. So we're bringing them into the plant. We're letting them have that opportunity. We want them to see the good work that we're doing and how we're engaging, and it kind of aligns us with some of those broader legislative goals. So we invite them, we bring them, we coordinate their visits, which is always, as you guys I'm sure know, that's always a heavy lift when you have anyone from government. They come with their whole staff and their team. But then the heavy lifting, if you go to the next slide, really is with our site leads. So we have, I think there's 10 plants there, maybe there might be more if I quickly add those up, but we have 10 manufacturing facilities across the United States. That is not all of our facilities. These are just the 10 that are going to participate. And then we also have our auto development center. So we're having all of these groups participate. So how do we coordinate that across the country? As you can see, we have some here in Ohio, but then we have Alabama, Indiana, South Carolina, North Carolina. We rely heavily on our sites. And we have a leader at each of those sites. And again, they participate. We have bi-monthly meetings up until we get closer in September. Then we start having weekly meetings. Their job is to facilitate the activity that's going to take place in their plants. Are they talking to their leaders? Are they coordinating the volunteers if needed? They're our day of point person. They're going to be that link between myself as a larger regional role at that local activity. Each of our, as Jen mentioned, each of our sites gets, they pick which day that they want. Sometime through October, I think one of our facilities maybe is going to have one in September just based on other activities. But we leave that flexibility for them, what's going to be the most successful when they for their area. They also try to balance that. Is there something else going on in the area? Are they going to be up against, especially in the South, are they going to be up against, Subaru that's right down the road or something? So we try to balance those to make sure that we have good attendance and that we're not also asking any one facility to do too much during that month. So we rely very heavily on the site leads. They're kind of the boots on the ground person for running manufacturing day. And then if you go to the next slide. So we also at Honda do something called PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, which just means we have reflections, and we do that after every event. And this is just a summary of some of the reflections from last year, but we like to go back and say what worked out really well, and then immediately start understanding where we had room for improvement. And I'll say some of the things that we were able to do at all of our locations was the hands-on activity. We had a ton of positive feedback. We actually sent out surveys to some of our the teachers and the organizers from the schools themselves. We asked them what their feedback was, and they said those hands-on activities were great. They loved it. They thought it was it brought those high school students out of their shell. I think that was mentioned that high school students can act too cool, set it up as a competition, and they break out of their shells. Or put a racing simulator in front of them, they seem to come unglued. They get so excited to participate. So those were really positive. That was a really positive feedback. We also asked, looking at areas of improvement. We weren't able to do all of the tours in our facilities last year because just as Honda in general, we were closed. We hadn't come out of some of our COVID protocols, so we hadn't opened up for tours at all of our locations. And that was some of the feedback was we really want the tours. We want to do the hands-on and the tours. So again, we're trying to incorporate that as we go this coming year. One big thing that we are doing is we're talking about pathways into Honda, right? We want to show them a job. We want to say, this is how you can get from here to there. So if you're in the facility, you saw this, we're giving you these hands-on activities. We're showing you what engineers do. You're going to grab a teach pendant, you're moving a robot around, you're using our laser scanner, whatever it is you're doing, and you thought that was cool. On your way out, we want to have you talk to some partners to say, you're here, here's how you get from here to here. So not just talking to our talent acquisition, but talking to career tech centers, talking to 2-year and 4-year colleges, talking to some of our organizations that run STEM programs, after school programs. So those students, when they're leaving, they're on that high of, oh, that was really cool. They're walking with literature in hand to take home to their parents to say, hey, I really want to go to Wright State because their Lake campus has this. Mom, it's in my backyard, and they told me college was going to cost this much. Or I want to go, I'm in 9th grade, I want to do career tech centers, right? They're getting that exposure, and they're going to walk away with that knowledge and information of how I get from where I am standing today to work at Honda or work at any other manufacturing facility. So we thought that was really important and something that we have not necessarily done consistently in the past, that we really want to make sure, again, that pathway. So one other thing, and then I'll stop talking. One thing we want to improve on is how do we, a lot of what we do is confidential, and we don't typically allow cell phones in the plant. How do we get the students, how do we work around those things? Because we think the students, they're so on social media, we need to meet them where they are. How do we make them our brand ambassador? I want them to have the cell phone. I want them to be taking a selfie near our, where we can tell them to. We can't have them in some locations doing so, but where we can, we need to allow that, because that's this generation. That's just how they communicate with one another. So then they can really sell it for us. They can talk about how cool it was. They'll go back and tell their friends, oh, I got to do this really cool tour. Here's what I got to do. And they can show you pictures. And hopefully they'll post it on social media and they'll use the hashtag, right? That's our goal. So we have some definite, areas for improvement, and we're going to take all of this, and we're working as a team with all of our site leaders and all of our, the org chart that I showed earlier. We're using all of those groups, all of the knowledge, and how do we make it cool and exciting for the students? And I think the last page was just pictures of our event, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Oh, one thing before, if you could click at the very bottom right-hand side, there's a video. Yeah. So this, we had a 360 camera that we used, and this was just a really fun thing. We had the students, I showed you this as a Honda person, but we did have the students get on this 360 camera. They can use their own phone. This was one of the locations. It was just like a fun way to get, you can see some of the students were using it. We had our plant manager actually get on and do it as well. But it's just a fun takeaway that the students own that. They could walk away. We had our product lined out all around it. But then there's just some images here of them doing hands-on stuff. They're talking with our wind tunnel. They're getting to, use a die. And we just use aluminum and some 3D part, printed part to show them how a die works. They were using an infrared camera and taking selfies in front of the infrared camera, which I find to be hilarious, just in general, and then doing some of our virtual training simulation programs. So we try to make that as hands-on and interactive as possible. Again, in this case, with the absence of tours in a lot of the locations, we tried to make this as engaging as possible. So I will stop talking.
Loads of information. And I know somebody asked earlier, but obviously we are recording this and we're going to send out these slides afterwards as well. So all of that stuff that you saw of, how Honda kind of works through their planning and even assessment process, Meredith and Honda have been kind enough to share that with you as well. So just a couple things before we move to the Q&A. Just remember that on mfgday.com, which is kind of the hub for all the resources and information, as well as registration. And if you want to find an event, see, other companies that have maybe hosted near you in the past, whatever that might be. We have a slew of resources on there, some that are still going to be posted here within the next 2 weeks as well, leading up to our next webinar. But you can go and access all of those, again, 100% free to use those. But please remember, as you are working on these events, to register them on mfgday.com. This map that you see right there, that's as of today. I think we've got 28 events that are registered so far. But we know there are thousands of events happening across the US, but we can't build awareness around all of that and highlight the great work if we don't know about them. So it's relatively easy to go on there. You can create an account. Once you register it, you can actually go back in and make changes as well. So if all you have right now is kind of, here's the date that we're targeting, or maybe you don't even have a date, but maybe, here's, what we are thinking about maybe doing, or you just want to put your site on the map saying we're committed to this, you can do that minimum for now, and then go back in and change the information as you start identifying all of those specifics, if you will. But it's not just about being on the map. It's about, you are going to have a landing page that you can use if you want that to share out publicly for your event and have people register through that. But more important, again, this is helping raise awareness nationwide of all the great work that's happening in these small communities across the country. It does demonstrate continuity of what we as a manufacturing community are all doing together to influence and excite the next generation of manufacturing workforce. And it really shows those grassroots partnerships where you're working together with, maybe it's your different educational institutions or your workforce development board, economic development, so on and so forth, what you're doing in your community, but it's all working towards that greater goal and the greater good as well. So again, we encourage you to register your events. If you are an organization like Honda, and maybe you are going to have, or if you're an economic development board or an MEP, and maybe you're helping organize multiple different tours or events in your community, we can do an upload of those too. So if you have more than 5, please let me know, and we will, I won't make you go in and enter all the information individually for each of those. So, and remember, you don't have to be a member of the NAM. You don't have to be a sponsor of MFG Day to register your events. If you are hosting students somehow, or educators, or community event, or celebrating your own employees and letting them bring their children in to work with them, whatever that might be, please be a part of MFG Day. As the whole. So I do have MFG Day office hours that I host most Tuesdays. So if you want just to have a little bit more one-on-one conversation, bounce some ideas off of me, or we can talk through some things, I'm happy to do that. These links will all be active when I send out the slides afterwards as well. And then our final planning webinar will be Thursday, June 29th. Again, focused more on crowd building, marketing your event, and then amplifying MFG Day as a whole. So with that, we have some questions in the chat, I know, and then you're also welcome to come off of mute if you would like to ask your question in person. So I'm going to go back up to the top. Eric, one for you, especially since you talk about second graders for your events. Can you talk about, like, what is the youngest, or how do you work around liability issues to bring young children into your facility?
To answer the youngest question, we've had brownies here and we've had Cub Scouts, and I absolutely love it. They usually come in the evening with their parents, and quite frankly, the parents get just as much of a kick out of it as the kids do. The way we make sure there are no problems, safety problems, is a small group with an employee tour guide, and the employees know they have to watch out for the students. And in all of these people, we've never had any hint of any problem. They're usually so thankful to come in and see things that I don't think there's a liability concern.
And Meredith, I'll ask you the same question. Is there kind of an age cutoff for Honda to have tours in the facility? And if so, how do you work around or work with
I'm
it?
embarrassed to say this, I don't know. I know we had a middle school group here today. I know that when we have open houses, but that's typically, and open houses are available to any age, but that's typically manufacturing is shut down. I was really hoping you wouldn't ask me. I can't remember. I'll have to double check. I can let you know. I apologize.
I retract that question from you.
Yeah, right.
At Cincinnati Incorporated, we have a release of liability waiver that we send out. That's kind of how we get around it. Also guided tours. Yep.
Yeah.
Great tip to share with the liability waiver. Somebody asked me directly, but I'm going to pose this to you as well. They've in the past had trouble with press releases for their open houses and tours. Can you offer any insights on how to get the press to their event? And I'll say this is something that may be covered in the next webinar as well, but if you have tips for that, I welcome them.
We've had quite a few, excuse me, go ahead. We've had quite a few press releases, mostly politicians here. However, I don't remember ever having TV cameras or radio personalities for manufacturing day. We've had politicians who come through. A couple of governors ago, Governor Walker was here once, and he quite frankly jumped right in with the kids. He went right around and was doing all the things that the students were doing.
Yeah, I'll say, I don't know, in the couple of years that I've been involved, we have not had media participate, but we will send out the press release to them, to the local media in each of the locations, but we've not had the media necessarily come here. We have had our, what's the word I'm looking for? We have had our when we've had governor, I think we had the lieutenant governor here last year, and he brought his media team, but I don't know that we've ever had the media team be present at Honda, unfortunately. So I can't say that. Yeah, I can't say that. I think we've just released press releases. I apologize. That's definitely not my area of expertise, but we don't typically get the media to attend. If you're asking if we don't rely on the media or the press release to invite people, we do that individually. We reach out to our partner schools individually. So we don't put the press release out as an invitation. It's more of a update to media, invite them if they want to come. We do that with local TV and print media, I believe. Yeah, I think. Yeah, local TV. We don't get much response. I think we put it out there. Honda obviously has a larger name, but I don't know. They're not attending if it makes it into the local media. I have seen the schools that come, they will put it in their media. They do a good job of advertising the event after the fact to say, we attended this event at Honda, and they show their pictures and have their information and articles. That's really helpful. I find that they're putting that out there inside of their district or inside of their school system. But I would say the local media, we send it to them, and I'm not certain we've gotten much legs with that.
Let's see. Eric, you talked about teacher externships. Can you talk a little bit more about that as well as other teacher involvement?
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Before I bought GenMed, I used to work in a shipyard building ships for the Navy. So I call things sea stories. And the goal of teacher externship is to give the teachers sea stories so that they can motivate a student who may not be paying attention for a real world thing. I have had, I think, 6. We had 2 online for last year, but I had to secure them because of COVID. The teachers end up telling their buddies, and you get more than they keep applying. It's a good thing.
Meredith, Melinda asked, with your like different stations in your passport that you use, were the students allowed to go by choice to the different Honda stations as part of the passport achievement? And if so, how is that managed from a safety and crowd control perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, because we weren't doing tours across the board, we had, and I'm sitting in one of the rooms, we opened up a really large room and had the tables set out as kind of like booths so the students could move around. There was enough space. We would limit, and when we invited the schools, we had them sign up for a time and we staggered that. So we would have 50, 75 students in the room with the displays. They would engage and they kind of moved around as they wanted. We had about 6, a minimum of 6 stations. So they could spend about 10 minutes doing that. Some students stayed a lot longer at some stations and not so long at other. I'll be honest, to make it fun, we didn't deny any student a hat at the end. We did end up having just about 100% participation, but so as not to say, oh no, you didn't participate in that one. We gave everyone a hat, but we honestly had everyone move through. So we didn't have to worry so much about safety. It was just a big open room. What ended up happening is a student said, hey, I have this sticker, but I don't have, which one am I missing? And then they kind of go over and say, I didn't go to that table yet. So that's kind of, they maneuvered around themselves and figured out who had which sticker that they needed. But yeah, safety wasn't such an issue because it was an enclosed room.
And I see some folks sharing kind of what they have done with press releases and getting the media or information out to the media as well, kind of down in the chat. So thank you all for sharing that. Jeanette asked, good question. The whole process for registering the event on the map tells me that you're logged in but can't see any other instructions. So my view might be just a little bit different than yours. So I apologize if it doesn't work just like this, but once you're logged in, you should see kind of a black bar across the top, and to the far left, I think it'll say manufacturing day. or I'm gonna probably get it wrong. There's another word that may pop up too. And I'm sorry, I can't do it on my computer right now, or I'll end up all over showing you who knows what screens, but you should be able to see that and click on that. And it should, or even down below, might show you something with events. I'm happy to walk through that with you one-on-one and kind of do a share screen too, Jeanette, if we need to do that. But once you get in there, it should have, actually, let me see if I can demonstrate this right now, because this is, I don't want this to be a holdup for anyone. And while I'm doing this, oh, lots of examples, good. Let's see if I can share and see where we end up here. All right, so if I go to mfgday.com, are you all able to see my screen at this point in time? Do you see the MFG Day website?
Yes.
So once you're here, you go to host an event. This is where you would log in. If you've never logged in before, you're going to use this register button. And so again, I have a little bit of a different account than most of you, but this is what we need to see, I think. So here under register a new event, you should go to add new event or dashboard. That's the word I was trying to think of earlier. Or if you see up here, this is the black bar I'm talking about. I'm not sure if you all see that or not. So my apologies from that perspective. But once you get there, it should give you this opportunity to enter in all of your event info. Now notice, first off, this highlighted line, this becomes a holdup for a lot of folks because these are two separate tabs. So here is registration information. If I click on this, it changes to where I'm going to put in information about me as a host or as that organization as well. So you're going to want to make sure that you complete the required fields under both of those tabs. Anything that is required is going to have this little red asterisk next to it. So there are several fields that are not required. Encourage you to enter as much information as you'd like to, but only a few that are really necessary to enter in there. Once you enter in all of that information that's required, so this is right now showing us the organization info. This is the registration info. Even if your event is not open to the public, we still want these on here. You can just toggle this to turn it off. And then your event will still show up on the map, but there will not be a button for anybody to click on to say, I want to register right now, essentially. Once you complete all of this information and you hit save, what that's going to do is come over to me. I'm going to review it. I'm going to approve it. And usually within 1 to 2 business days, that's done and you'll be able to find your event on the map. If by some chance you're having issues with the registration, you keep getting errors, whatever, this click here button will actually take you to a backup form that's going to capture all this information and then we'll put it in for you. So definitely not the preferred way, because if I enter that for you, you're not going to have access to go back and change it. But at the same time, we don't want you to be held up with any issues on the registration page that keeps you from registering those events. So again, I'm always happy to help in any way with that. Please feel free to reach out to me via mfgday@nam.org, or you can just email me directly at jwhite@nam.org. So I hope that was helpful in looking through that. And then I know we're coming up on time here as well. I think we've answered all of the questions that were in the chat. Anybody else have any final questions that weren't asked? Jessica asks, what's the best way to get internal MFG employees to want to volunteer time to speak with students? Excellent question.
I can answer that. we find I have a hard time. We turn away people because once they see what I have typically done is just invite people, especially people who are apprehensive, I'm sure. I invite them to an event and I find that people are clamoring to participate after that. They are asking me, I'm getting emails all the time. I was literally just doing the tour and activity with this middle school group. And I had someone stop me and they were like, is this your job all the time? How can I get involved? As soon as they see it, they want to do it. I've just talked with our leadership about how the work that we do impacts employee morale and engagement. I find that people enjoy as soon as they start getting around these students and they're asked questions, they really, even the quietest, shyest of people really get excited to talk a lot about the work that they do and to share. And it reminds them of how cool their job is. We have a sign up system so that people can sign up for it. But I find that people are reaching out to me to say, hey, before you ask for sign, I want to volunteer. I want to do this. So it's almost like you need to find some willing people to do it the first time and have others that you're kind of dragging to watch, and they'll very quickly jump in. Have them do something very specific where they're showing their job, or they're getting to lead their job again, hands-on or otherwise. Have them show what they do. People like to talk about themselves. So it's an easy sell, I feel like.
I would agree with one caveat. If they haven't seen one, they get awfully nervous. I've had a few, I like to get the ladies in production to talk to, primarily the young girls, but they're often very nervous to do that. Even talk to second graders. Why are you nervous about talking to second graders? However, after they've seen one of the tours, then they do clamor to get on board. Lost my train of thought.
Elaine, I see that you are off mute. I wanted to make sure if you had something to add or a question that we give you the opportunity.
Oh, no, I put it in the chat that we just finished our manufacturing boot camp last week. You know, we do it in summer, of course, so because the kids are out of school. But boy, your hands-on examples were great, because we give the kids, I have a feedback form for them to fill out every day. We finish at 3, and it's just, what's the best part of the day, the least favorite part of the day, what can we do to make the program better? And almost every one of them said more hands-on. We want hands-on. You know, they're walking through a plant and it's interesting, but they're just walking through a plant and that's it. So we're trying to come up, I have a whole committee of volunteers. So we're going to meet next week, kind of do a hot wash of how did it work? What can we do to make it better? And your suggestions were great. So I hope we can incorporate those for next year. And and we bring counselors, high school counselors, to the manufacturing places every year, usually twice a year. But yeah, the kids were great this year. And I will tell you, I am just so proud of them. Not one kid brought out his or her cell phone all week. So there is hope for this world. I tell you,
Hey,
I was really proud.
Yeah, these kids, this generation, I know sometimes we can put them down, but they think of things and they are full. If you need something tech-wise,
Yeah.
they're going to get it. They're going to make it happen. But when you can pose problems to them, they tend to think of things in such different ways than us. So it's exciting, honestly, we have got to start, thinking more about how we meet them where they're at, I think, as Mary put it earlier. So thank you for that. And if anybody else has incorporated some hands-on activities in your events in the past that have really gone over well, and you are willing to share them with the crowd, please, feel free to send those to me, and I'm happy to include those in follow-up emails and kind of put together a resource center for manufacturers and other organizations to use. We are all in this together, and there's so much great work going on out there that we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. So appreciate anybody who might be willing to share some of those ideas. So
Can I add one more thing? I'm sorry.
Real quick.
Sorry, real quick. When you were talking about women in the workplace in manufacturing, we have Piper Aircraft here in Vero, about 1,100 employees. And there's a woman there who used to work there. She has her own company, her own manufacturing company now. She sent me a photo, an aerial of women at Piper Aircraft standing around an airplane. There were like 600 of them. and they were not in the admin. They were like on the production floor. So that's a great photo.
Yes. And a quick shameless plug for our Women Make America program at the Manufacturing Institute, who are working hard every day to highlight women that are, I say, they're trailblazers for those to come behind them. And we also have our mentorship program now that we're even reaching younger with. So always happy to share more information about all the programs at the Manufacturing Institute as well. I get excited to talk about it all. But with that, we are at the end of the time. I do thank very much Eric and Meredith for sharing with us, but you have done for years and are continuing to improve at both GenMet and Honda, as well as the rest of you who have taken the time to join us today. And I know many of you have also been doing these events year over year and have great practices in place. I wish I could highlight everybody, but I don't think time will allow me for that, but we'll get there. So again, thank you all. The recording, the slides will all come out probably Monday. That email should come to you, but they'll be posted on mfgday.com as well. So thank you all again. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a wonderful weekend this weekend.
Thank
Thank-
you.